Welcome to Inside the Skev, and I'm your host, Aaron Masliansky. Today we have Brandis Friedman on the show, and Brandis is a Skevanston resident and also on Chicago Tonight on WTTW Channel 11 PBS in Chicago. So, Brandis, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So it's cool to actually have a real media celebrity here in Skevanston. And
we use the word celebrity loosely. It's like a running joke in my house.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, it's true, and it's cool that our kids go to school together at Walker. So shout out to Walker. But it is. Great that you're on this show. You're talking about things going on in Chicago and great journalism. And how did you get into this role?
So this role, I feel like I got pretty lucky when I got it. So when we first moved to Chicago, my husband and I had been in D.C. for about 5 years, and I was producing at the ABC affiliate there. And I had been, a reporter in different markets before that for several years, before D.C. and then before Chicago. But when we were leaving D.C., we knew we wanted to be closer to family. My husband is from Morton Grove.
Not too far.
Yeah, not too far down the road. He went to Maine East High School, and my in-laws are in Northbrook now. And so we chose Chicago because we knew it would have more opportunity for the both of us. Because I'm originally from Mississippi. I went to college in New Orleans and grad school in New York. And my husband and I met in Little Rock. Between the two of us, we moved around a lot. And that's not even all the cities where we've lived, but between the two of us. And so we knew Chicago would have more opportunity for the both of us than any of those other places. Like if we had moved to Mississippi or New Orleans to be closer to my mom, not as many professional opportunities, and still not quite as close to the family that we wanted to be close to.
Sure.
As far as proximity goes, we'd be happy to be close to my mom, just
not too close.
well, plenty close, but New Orleans was still 3 hours away versus,
Sure.
My in-laws now are a half hour away.
Right.
And so my first job in Chicago was actually at BBM News Radio. I was a freelance reporter and anchor there. And while I was doing that, I also did a little bit of freelance hair writing for a pair of hair magazines.
Okay. That's random.
Yeah, it was random. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was kind of, beauty and style writing, which I also liked.
Yeah.
But yes, it's nothing at all like what I do today. I was interviewing celebrity manicurists at the time about, the next trend in nails or hair color. And, now I'm interviewing the mayor occasionally. I don't interview the mayor very often. I'll leave that to my coworkers.
But you're talking about serious subjects of things going on in Chicago.
Yeah.
So if people haven't watched Chicago Tonight, what is the show about? What goes on?
So we describe ourselves as it's an hour-long, news and analysis program on the city's PBS affiliate. And I think WTTW might be the second biggest PBS affiliate in the country or third, something like that. We're pretty big. But very few other PBS affiliates nationwide have a similar program. And if they do, and there are a handful of them, it's about a half hour at those stations. So we're the only one that does an hour. Mm-hmm. The show is 35 years old now, I think. And the way I describe it, it's a bit different from the news that you'll see on a lot of the commercial stations. Ours is more in-depth, so our segments are a lot longer. As a reporter, I might get 3 or 4 minutes for a package compared to if I were at one of the commercial stations, they get, a minute to a minute and a half, and maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes if it's during sweeps.
Right.
Maybe. So our segments are a lot longer. We do a lot of in-studio talk segments as well, and we think that allows the newsmakers or a book author or whoever it might be, that allows them to, kind of make their full argument, whatever it might be. It allows us to fully explain something that might be complicated, like pensions, and sometimes, a very long segment about pensions can get weedy. So, it is our job to make that interesting, but also to help the viewers understand it and understand why it matters to them. And so sometimes when the issues get complicated like that, it's good that we have a little bit of extra time to explain it. And it's not all about the pensions. That's just an example because it is the most complicated, yes.
I mean, even last night you were doing a segment on coffee roasters
yes.
in the city, is these two guys, and I mean, I want to go down there and grab a cup of coffee.
Exactly, yeah. So we get to take you places, where maybe you hadn't thought about going, and then you see this story, and now you're thinking about it, or you know that it exists, and you want to check out that part of town.
Yeah, it goes along with PBS's mission, where the shows are in depth, and you really actually learn the story rather than just a little watered down blip of it.
Right. Our mission to inform and educate and hopefully inspire.
Yeah. No, I think it's fantastic, and
Thank you.
I mean, and one of the ways that public broadcasting is funded is through donations and whatnot, but not as many commercials. So, I mean, does that make it harder to run a station like that?
It can. I mean, from my perspective, because thankfully, like as a journalist, like the budget's not my department,
right?
Which makes ignorance is bliss, right? It makes it easy to kind of complain, but I'm not the person who actually has to figure things out. And they have a very important job at that. But I think a lot of us notice that the resources is a big difference. For example, for an hour-long show that we do every night, and we've got 5 or 6 producers, 3 or 4 reporters per day. And we've got 2 photographers to help us cover the entire city. So we have to get kind of creative. We can't cover everything every day because of where we're located and because we just don't have the number of crews that some of the other stations have. That makes it a little bit harder for us to get downtown if somebody calls a last-minute press conference or if they call one across the city without a whole lot of notice. We don't have people all over the place.
Right.
But I think all of that said, I think we still do a pretty good job considering our constraints.
Well, it's even better because you're actually getting the full story. And
Exactly.
Do you write a lot of the stories that you're telling, or do you write the interview questions? How does that work?
It's collaborative. It depends on the story, right? So I'm working on a story now that hopefully will air next week, and that one's all me. I will check in with my boss from time to time to get his opinion on, should I pursue this or, should we include that or leave it out? But when it's time to, sit down and write the story, I come up with the questions for the interview. I conduct those interviews myself, and then, I look through that interview and decide what sound bites I want to use, how I want to write and add to it, what visuals I want to include, and I write that entire thing. I kind of guide the photographer when he's shooting it. I guide the editor when he's editing it. Obviously, whatever my script, it gets approved by my boss, and he may have questions or changes or suggestions. And I mean, same thing with our graphics artists. I kind of ask them to make something for me, and we kind of work that out together. And so that's all me, right? That as a reporter, that's my duty. But when I'm hosting, and for all of us when we're hosting, that's a lot more collaborative with a producer who is usually in charge of kind of picking the video, but he or she will say, so here's the video I'm thinking about using, and I'll say, I think that's great. Maybe we don't need that, or maybe we should add that. Same thing with questions. Producers, they carry a lot of the load with regards to the interview segments that you see in studio. Mm-hmm. They conduct pre-interviews with whoever it is that we're going to have on the show, and then, they share all of those notes or as much of the verbatim from that pre-interview as they can with the host, and a lot of the research as well. So it's our job to read up and to study what they've given us to be sure that we understand it, so that when we were asking questions live on television during the interview, we're prepared in case someone says something that we weren't expecting, even though we pretty much know what they're going to say because the producer did a pre-interview.
Right.
In case we can push back with a politician, for example, if we need to, or get a point of clarification if someone says something that if we don't understand it, the audience at home isn't going to understand it. So all of that, someone else helps us with that a lot.
And do you have the questions up on a teleprompter? Are you reading off of that, or is it something where you have to be? It's kind of impromptu because of things that come up where they may be answered differently than you think.
Yeah, when I'm doing a live interview, in the studio, or one that I know, even if we don't do this often, but if we're shooting one in the field and I know that the interview has to be 8 minutes long, then I'm going off of a list of questions just because I don't want to be caught in a position where I'm kind of, thinking through my questions or thinking out loud, because whatever happens in those 8 minutes is what goes on television. So it needs to be succinct, right? You need to use that time wisely. But if I'm just in the field shooting an interview on my own, I might take a few notes, don't forget to ask about this, that, and the other. But mostly, I know what I need to know. I know what I want to ask. And I can just take my time asking all those questions if I need to.
Have you had mentors that have helped you figure out how to do things, or do you model yourself off of other reporters in the past?
I have had mentors. I try and take a little bit from everybody. Mm-hmm. I may watch, how a colleague or a fellow reporter or producer does something and think, oh, that's a good idea. I like the way you did that. I should try that too. Or that was a creative graphic. Or, sometimes I'll watch one of the other hosts in the studio conducting an interview, and I'm like, he is really good at not checking his notes when he asks questions. I need to work on that. When I was producing in DC, I did have several mentors there. They were usually like reporters, because I was producing and I wanted to get back on air into being a reporter. And in that position, I was, junior to those reporters.
Yeah.
And many of them were very helpful and supportive. And, if I'm like, should I volunteer to do this? And they're like, yes, volunteer, early and often, kind of like voting.
Right, in Chicago.
In Chicago, vote early, vote often. And so I can't think of like any one particular mentor that I've had, consistently over the entire time. I feel like I've, picked up a mentor here or a mentor there, or just, a boss who I appreciated, who was supportive. Those are learning opportunities too.
And how did you get into it in the first place? And where did you go to school to learn your craft?
I think somewhere like late in high school, I realized that I like to learn new things, because I always feel like I don't know enough about anything, and everybody knows everything but me. So I'm going to be a reporter, so I can ask questions. So I like to learn. I like to learn new things and tell other people what I've learned. And so I think somewhere in high school, I was like, I want to be a reporter. And I won't lie, I was watching a movie. And
which movie?
It was The Pelican Brief, which is, for a number of reasons, I loved the movie. Like, I like the actors, Denzel Washington and Julia Roberts. It is written by a Mississippi author, John Grisham. It takes place in New Orleans, D.C., and New York, which are, three of my favorite cities, in addition to Chicago. And then, so I decided to study mass communications in college, and I ended up going to college in New Orleans. And I think that's kind of, when I knew I wanted to be a TV reporter, just because I prefer to tell stories visually. I like to use like the actual pictures in the video to tell the story. That's just my preference, obviously. Because there are tons of print reporters who can, paint you a picture.
But there's a lot more that you can share by having it visually, and people can take in a lot more that way.
Exactly. I want to be able to take you there.
Right.
So, and then I went to grad school at Columbia in New York for journalism, because at the time I was under the impression, and I think somebody might have encouraged this as well, that, a college degree isn't good enough. You have to have a, grad school degree too. And a lot of journalists would say that's not true.
Oh, really?
Yes. A lot of journalists would say, that we're a trade, and what is it that you're learning in graduate school that you cannot learn on the job? By the way, I spent a lot of money to go to graduate school, as many people
Columbia.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ivy League in particular, as many people do. That said, I think it has to be a personal choice that, that we all have to make. I really appreciated my experience at Columbia. I had some classmates who did not. But I loved, that year that I spent in New York. I feel like I did get a decent amount of, I won't say experience, but sort of like, that basic education that I could take into the field later on.
And graduate school is not just about the education, it's about networking too.
It is about networking, and when you go to an Ivy League school, you get a good network.
You sure do. You're paying for that, and it can be worth it.
Yeah.
What do you recommend if somebody wants to get into journalism? They're, let's say, a teenager, and they're thinking about it like how you were back in the day.
Yeah, I would advise them to read as much as they can. And don't discount newspapers, obviously. Like, read the newspaper. I feel like a lot of young people these days are like, newspaper, what's that?
Right.
There's some really good journalism there, but don't forget that there's also a lot of the nonprofit journalism is really good as well. Excellent investigative journalism there. And of course, watch the news, but be choosy about what you watch.
Right. There's a slant to it, and
Yes.
a way to meet their the demographic of that the advertisers want to reach.
Yes. So I would say make sure that they have a palette of news that they are consuming, and start practicing writing, because writing is important for any journalist, no matter what medium you're in. So I think all of that's really important.
Yeah.
And practice a little bit of social media, because that's one thing that at my age I'm not that good at, and I should be, and I have to work on it. I have to keep working on it.
Well, it is a great way to reach people, and you look at what's been going on with Facebook and how it affected the elections. It's a great way to be able to get the word out and share a story.
Yes, and be wary of fake news.
Absolutely.
It's a real thing. I'm not like it's there's legit fake news, obviously, and then there's what some people pretend is fake news.
Right.
Yes.
And I think by reading reading different journals, reading newspapers, you kind of it slows it down, and you can kind of understand a little bit more about what's actually going on.
Yes.
Or watching a show like Chicago Tonight, where it isn't just a 30-second soundbite. It's something where you're actually listening to the people that are making the news.
Exactly. And not to discount, my colleagues at the commercial stations, they all do a really good job as well. There are some local TV news reporters who are just outstanding.
For sure.
Even though their stories are shorter. They're
Right.
really good at what they do.
Yeah. What are some of the stories that, are your favorite ones to cover?
Oh, that's hard. I'm not sure I have any favorites, right? There are some that are my least favorite.
Sure.
But there are, I don't know.
What are some of the least favorite?
Oh, gosh. I'll tell you, I tell this story a lot. One of my least favorite stories that I had to cover, and a lot of the times, when we're covering these stories, you have to do them, right? To not do these stories, we are not doing our jobs. But they were hard to do. So when I was in Little Rock, it was in the 2000s, and the Iraq War was still in its early months, I guess, early years, right when I had started that job in Little Rock. And at some point over my first year or so there, what was it? It was an Arkansas National Guard. I want to say it was a battalion, 3,000 National Guardsmen.
Yeah.
Were deployed. And in one weekend, 5 from the Little Rock area died. I was the weekend reporter.
Oh, boy.
Guess who had to call 5 families?
Oh, God.
Yeah. That is the absolute worst part of the job, I think, to have to call the family of any person who's been killed, whether in battle or on the streets of Chicago, to have to call them at, what is the worst day for them. Because you have to give them the opportunity, right? Some of them are happy to talk to you because they want to honor the person they lost, or they want to plead for people to get the word out, just, if they were witness to a murder, for example, or, and then some of them want you to go the you-know-what away. And all of them have their reasons. I can't be angry at any of them for what they choose, but to have to do that is the worst part of the job.
You feel like you're invading their most deepest moments.
Yes, yeah, invading their grief. I remember at some point Sunday afternoon, by this point, someone had slammed the door in my face. It's going to happen.
Oh, boy.
And I think I sat in the car and cried while my photographer was shooting some video for a second. And then the next day I had a live shot outside of the Little Rock Air Force Base. And it felt like 10 seconds. It was probably more like 2 or 3. I was supposed to be talking and just nothing was coming out of my mouth because this is it was Monday, but for me it was my Friday because I worked weekends. And so I don't know what it was I was supposed to be saying, but we come out of the video and I'm supposed to start talking. I think it took me 2 or 3 seconds. And then I finally started saying whatever it was I was supposed to say. But I remember later on at the meeting, my boss kind of looked at me like, Merle? And even my friends were like, she must be tired, you think?
Well, emotionally drained.
Yes, yeah. Well, I can't complain, I'm a reporter in Little Rock. I'm not going through what those families and what those soldiers are going through. But yeah, it was hard.
Well, absolutely. And it must be crazy, if you're an embedded journalist in the war. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how those people go through that. Yeah. That is dangerous. Yeah. But it's important to share those stories. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think what you guys
important work.
It's very important work. Mm-hmm. And we need to continue to have a great, journalism, a group of people that do this. And I think that's one of the, sad things about the internet, where people do just rely on social media for their news sometimes. Mm-hmm. But we need to support what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. And, your typical day, though, are you on TV every day? Is it something that you have to show up first thing in the morning? How does it do you tape live? How does that all work?
So our schedules, I want to say they're different every day.
Yeah.
The consistent thing is that we're all working towards the 7 o'clock show, because the show comes on at 7 o'clock for 1 hour, Channel 11. I don't know what you have if you've got cable. And so, I've got 2 small kids. I'm the only reporter on staff with little kids. So I have to organize my schedule a little bit differently from the other reporters who don't have kids. If they know that the mayor's having a 9:15 press conference, they can go do that and then work until the 7 o'clock show. And before I got my baby this summer, I could do that too, just because I can send my kid to school and then work all day. But Nobody really loves to do that. That's a long day. We don't do that often, but sometimes it's necessary. So I usually get in around 10:30 or 11:30, somewhere in there, depending on what I'm doing in the show that night, because sometimes I'm reporting, and if I know what I'm reporting on, then I can just plan to meet my photographer at whatever. For example, during the teacher strike, I would meet my photographer at CTU headquarters or at Malcolm X when negotiations were going on, or we would plan to meet at a particular school where the picket line was happening at a certain time, and get some video there, or if we knew CTU was having a rally. So I would just go straight to that. Sometimes I'd meet my photographer at the station because I'd always rather ride with him so that I can work in the car.
Sure.
I can't do that if I'm driving. But if I'm, for example, there's a segment in the show called Updates where we do 3 or 4, just short stories that we didn't necessarily put a reporter on that day, but they're still important and need to be in the newscast that night. So sometimes I can just go straight to the office and start working on that while also, researching story ideas or prepping for another segment that I've got coming up, just because it's, that doesn't take my entire day to do that. So I'll usually juggle that with something else, maybe setting up another story. There are nights when I'm hosting the entire show, in which case I'll get in around 11:30 or so, and then producers will start checking in with me on what they're producing for that night. And here's the material that you need to get ready for it. And maybe there's a pre-tape at 3:45, so makeup will be here at 3. So be ready for that. Do I need to bring it? Some of this is cosmetic, right? Do I need to bring a change of clothes? That's a little secret. Don't tell anybody. I told you. Sometimes we record things. But
makes it a little bit easier that way.
Yes, it does. But usually it's a segment here, a segment there. Only once a year do we record the entire show, and that's during our sweepstakes. I get paid to talk. And that was, we did that a couple of weeks ago. We taped it at like 5 or 5:30, and then the show aired at 7 that night. But otherwise, the show is live every night at 7 o'clock.
Do you like when you're hosting the whole show?
It is fun. It depends on like what's going on that day. Sometimes, you can have, a couple of fun segments, and sometimes they're all serious. But I do like it just because it's a really good way to kind of know what's in the show, but also to learn a lot of things, because your producers have been sending you links to articles and pre-interviews with people all day long. And so you're reading all of that stuff. Because like I said, I like to learn. And so this is a good way to learn what's going on and what we're covering.
Well, you're probably one of the most informed people in Chicago.
I don't know. I feel like I know a little about a lot versus a lot about anything. Maybe education, and even then, like, it's relative, right? Just I've been covering education for 4 years. And the first couple of years of that, I spent, about 75% of my time on it. And now it's more like 40% of my time on education news, just because I'm doing other things and you can't keep up with everything.
Right.
So there are, education reporters in this city who cover it, all day and all night. And so they know far more about it than I do.
It just came to my mind. It's like somebody who has this type of knowledge, like a reporter, probably would be good being in politics, because you have a lot of knowledge of a lot of the subjects that come up for votes.
Some reporters I've seen, like in other markets, have run for office.
Yeah?
I can think of one in D.C. She was an anchor at my station at WJLA, and I think she ran for office. She ran after I left, so I can't remember if she won in Maryland. Don't remember what the office was, but her name is Kathleen Matthews. You might have heard of her husband, Chris Matthews, on MSNBC. Yeah. I can think of one like in New Orleans. I don't know if she won or not, but it does happen sometimes. And then some reporters, because they cover politics, they're just really good. Really, really good at it. My husband, when he was a reporter, covered politics a lot. And when he got out of the business, he went into politics, actually, first as a communications director on a congressional campaign in Ohio in 2006. He got out of it a couple of years later after we moved to D.C., though.
It's a little too much.
Yeah, I think it wasn't what he was expecting, actually. I think he was, I don't want to say jaded, but like, some people really, they go into politics, they want to make a difference and change the world, or just the district that they're working for. And he found himself, picking out the carpet color for the district office. He's like, this is not what I came into this for. No. So, and maybe that happens to some people, and some people stick around, long enough to move up and to do the stuff they really care about.
Right. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think, we talk about like how it's important to have an informed public. What are some of the things that PBS does to engage kids with news, or how do you suggest children get involved to understand what is the news and, should they start reading newspapers when they're 5, 6 years old?
That's actually a really good idea. Actually, can we start like a kids newscast maybe?
I mean, that's existed, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it's existed at WTTW. I remember as a kid reading some version of like the Saturday Post, I think, that came in the local newspaper, and my grandmother always gave it to me and tried to get me to read it. I don't think I ever did. So that's a really good idea. I know that like TTW and PBS really like their big mission with regards to kids is education, right? So obviously we've got the educational the animated cartoons that you see all day long. Nature Cat, which is actually locally produced out of WTTW. That one is that one's all about nature, of course. And then Peg Plus Cat, that one's a math show. And so all of them are educational, and they intend to be. I guess they're not so much news focused. And when you think about it, Chicago Tonight is our only news show.
True.
And so I'm not sure if that is a focus necessarily to get kids engaged in news. To educate kids is certainly a main focus of the station.
Yeah. It would be even good to have like a Walker field trip.
Actually, that's a very good idea. Who do we talk to about that?
I don't know.
Surely we know somebody.
Surely. But no, I think it would be important. And I try to get my kids to be involved and engaged in knowing about the news. Certain, stories I don't think are age appropriate, obviously,
Totally.
but it's good to know, to have an understanding of what's going on in the world. So I think that's important.
Absolutely.
Now,
My son, he's 6. He's not so much involved or interested in the news, but he's his father's child, and he does love the politics. So he does ask about occasionally he'll watch like the debate and ask a bunch of questions.
we could get in student advisory.
He could get into
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so you said the show Chicago Tonight is on at 7 o'clock on WTTW, and it's also available on the PBS app. So that's
It's available everywhere. The show is Facebook Live. It's on Facebook Live every night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Facebook Live. I think that's a verb. One of the things that I say on the show every night, or that all of us say when we're hosting, is that you can get us on the PBS app, but also YouTube, Facebook Live, and of course WTTW.com/news.
And also, you guys are on social media everywhere, I would assume.
Yes. We're boosting Instagram, I think, but we're definitely on the Twitter and the Facebooks.
Okay.
I say them both wrong on purpose. The Facebooks.
I like the Facebook.
Or the Spacebook, yeah.
It's on MySpace.
Oh, on MySpace, yes.
I don't even know if that still exists.
I don't think it does.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Brandis, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks so much for coming on, and everyone please tune in to Chicago Tonight at 7 o'clock every night.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening to this latest episode of Inside the Skev. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to know more about the Skev and more about what I do as a real estate agent in the area, go to Skevanston.com. They got a lot of great information there about exciting guests that have been on the show, live events that are coming up, and any type of information that you're looking for. And if you have any suggestions or questions for me, feel free to email me at aaron@skevanston.com. Always happy to hear from people. And thanks so much for listening, and please subscribe.